So as you can tell, I'm back home from that 2-week trip that was so enlightening in so many ways related to ocean. I have to remember to do that again in the future. There's similar to when I'd be focusing on creating art for an exhibition, this intense focus and dive down the rabbit hole of creativity and immersion and process. I always benefited from stepping back out of that hole and getting a different perspective. So this was a fantastic opportunity for me to do just that with ocean. And turns out that I was able to, hi Karen, work with some ocean goers in person. There were several down in Southwest Colorado. Hi Karen, let me hit the wave thing. Hi Laura. Oh, thanks for loving the Sue Sternberg interview, especially on nose work. Yeah, you know, Sue is really, she is such a big influencer in how I think about how I relate to my dogs and other people's dogs, and she's just, you know, brilliant when it comes to behavior, and she's also this fantastically fun person to be around, great sense of humor and all that. But she's really doing for nose work what I'm doing here in Ocean, with just a different focus, different sport. And you know, I think that there is kind of a trend right now that of moving away from this laboratory style training, which was really important for us all to know. But with that alone, you're kind of missing out on a great source of connection and motivation for dogs, which is their desire to be socially connected with us. I mean, that's, you know, how they became domesticated in the first place. The ones that were the most social, hanging around the campfire, were the ones that people kept and bred, and you know, here we are with dogs however many years later. Oh, one thing I wanted to say about these videos, and I'm going to share a couple more of the same 3 Mark Bucket video, but with two different teams, same person, 2 different dogs in Southwest Colorado. And you know, I hope everybody gets that I'm there to point out areas that have a little room for improvement. And I think I did a good job of pointing out the things that are good, but if I didn't, that's my fault. And overall, I think everybody did a fantastic job. The dogs were engaged, enthusiastic for the most part, and really that's what dog training is about for me. So the reason I combined today's Q&A with these coaching, you know, the one-on-one coaching with various people in person, because I happen to be where ocean goers were, is they really are related topics. What we saw in those videos has a significant role in how drivey our dogs are. So, and this is not like the definitive list, but the first 3 things that came to mind about building drive were clarity, that the dog has to have clarity about what we're asking. We need to be able to recognize a lack of clarity or confusion, that expression of confusion in our dogs. And we need to prioritize the dog's mindset over the behavior we're training. So if we keep those 3 things in mind, a dog should gain confidence and want to go faster. And in Sue's, the conversation I had with Sue, in the first 15 minutes, probably from the 10 to 15 minute mark, she talks about what lowers a dog's enthusiasm. And I remember hearing this from her 13 years ago, that going for accuracy before enthusiasm makes it really hard to get enthusiasm. But if you get enthusiasm first, accuracy comes with ease. And that is a really difficult thing to learn with your first dog, the dog that you learned about dog training with, because you haven't seen the ramifications yet of going for consistency first. But I definitely agree that if our focus is on getting things right, that our dog is more likely to be obedient versus enthusiastic. So in the case of Phil and Ziggy, he's the one that posed the question about how do you build more drive with dogs. I want to start off by saying that Phil and Ziggy are a really solid team. Ziggy is very forgiving about any confusion. He doesn't do dramatic things that would remove a cue or be annoying. And the same is true for another team at that same location, Janet and Lexi. So what both teams have in common is they have really good skills, really good communication. Their handling is, and just like I say, mine is good enough that their dogs can follow it. And their dogs, as a result, do really well in agility. And they compete in NADAC, and they are one of the few teams they're two of the few teams that do what are called bonus box runs, which, there's a box or line set up on a course, and the handler can't move outside that box or cross the line and has to direct the dog around the course. It takes a lot of training, and the dog has to have a lot of trust, and both these teams do great with it. But they're relatively new to this, and I believe both of these handlers, these are their first agility dogs. So years ago, when Lil was 3, so she's now almost 12, I saw the first bonus box handlers in NADAC, and I was so blown away by the level of training, but more so by the speed and enthusiasm that these dogs had, and that they were putting down the fastest times at trials. And it rarely cued because it was really, really hard. And I think the way they describe these bonus box runs is it's possible but unlikely that you will get a cue trying to handle from a little box. So that was this given, and people just went for it to see how they could do. And that excited me, and I put the distance skills on Lil, and I was one of the few teams that worked. I think there were 2 of us who worked with little terriers. And she was a phenomenal bonus dog. Full-blown enthusiasm, yahoo-ness, and I think in all the bonuses we did, we got maybe 4 over the years, and we did, I don't know, however many. But all of those NQs, those not cues, were fantastic runs. They were dynamic and fun to watch. And back then, when somebody was running a bonus, like they put all the bonus dogs at the front, the whole trial would just stop and everybody would watch and cheer these teams on because they were going for it. So over the years, some things changed in NADAC. And one of the significant changes is the course times used to be so tight in NADAC that if you had to redirect your dog in a major way or 2 little redirects, you wouldn't make course time, even with a fast dog. And that was NADAC's way of replacing the notion of like a refusal would create a NQ. So in every other organization, if a dog is within X number of feet or percentage of space in front of the next obstacle and they have a significant pause or turn away from it, you get a refusal fault and you don't qualify. But in NADAC, they didn't have that. So how they dealt with it is by making course time so tight, you didn't have time to have a major refusal or even 2 little ones. But a lot of people were complaining if they had slower dogs and they weren't making time. And so when NADAC shifted from the original owner to the next group of people, they decided to increase standard course times significantly. Besides that being like less challenging for people, because if you can rack up cues without trying very hard, if you can have a bunch of redirects and still get your cue, it gets a little boring. So you have to find different ways to challenge yourself. And Janet had mentioned the reason she got involved in distance is because she was finding it a little boring, that running course after course after course and getting these cues. Well, if they judged refusals. She probably wouldn't have gotten as many as I wouldn't have gotten as many, because refusals are more common than any other type of fault. But so anyway, the reason I'm going into this is when the course times changed and became much more generous, the bonus structure also changed. So all of a sudden, slower dogs could be doing distance challenges and cueing, whereas in the past the slower dog wouldn't cue, so people wouldn't even try it. So what happened is more people were doing bonuses, which is, I think, the goal. They wanted that to happen. But the overall vibe and look of these big distance bonus runs went from being the most exciting runs at the trial to being kind of boring and sometimes even painful, as you're watching dogs being encouraged and helped, and as they're barely even running, they're on the verge of trotting because they're unsure, they lack confidence doing what's being asked of them. And yet a lot of dogs, just based on their nature, are going to keep trying. So why am I going into all this detail? Because when you talk about building drive, you have to be able to observe your dog and connect with compassion and notice when you are over-facing your dog, whether it's 5 feet away, whether it's doing a new handling cue that you just realized your dog doesn't understand based on your dog's reaction, or whether it's asking for big distance, run after run after run. And going again back to the original distance, the inventor of all this, that she would say, you're not going to be able to do every run, and so you may not even want to try every one. And yet a lot of people do every single bonus run that's set just because they want to give it a shot, versus going, does my dog have these skills? Is my dog up for doing distance run after distance run after distance run? And I know for sure that Lil could do some distance runs, but when I ran her in the distance stakes division at Champs 2 years, she had a really hard time doing it 4 days in a row. And it was only 2 runs a day, but that was a lot to ask of her. Too much, I would say, under the pressure of big arena and big crowds and stuff. So it really is important to step back and assess how you're making your decisions. Do you want to run that many bonus attempts, or is there another way you can challenge yourself? Now that making course time is so ridiculously generous in NADEC that's not challenging. So what I would suggest to both Janet and Phil, if they want to challenge themselves beyond where they're at, and where they're at is like high level teams. They're like at the top level of the teams that run in this area. So they can be fine doing exactly what they're doing. I'm not saying they need to do anything, but in Ocean, if they're looking for a new place to go, the way I see them going is increasing the enthusiasm, and which will express as increased speed, and they should be whooping my butt. They should be running as fast or faster than Dakota. Alexi is a very compact border collie. She is the optimal size, I think, in terms of stride length for any agility venue. And Ziggy's probably about Dakota's size, and he has a longer stride. So these 3 dogs should be neck and neck for speed. And at the trial last weekend, Dakota was 6 seconds faster. And I'm not saying that to brag. I'm saying it as a comparison of his level of enthusiasm was super high, and his level of clarity about handling was super high. And that's why he was that much faster.